Hello everyone. In this video, I want to talk about Managed DevOps Pools. This is one of my favorite services in Azure right now, and I think that it will help us a lot to improve the efficiency of our Azure DevOps pipelines. Before we get started, let's have a quick look how we can host our agents in Azure DevOps right now. So the first option we have is the Microsoft hosted agents. We can either use Ubuntu or Windows, and Microsoft takes care of everything. The downside of this approach is that it comes with some limitations. For example, the runtime is limited, and we also can't integrate the agent in VNets. And the other option we have is self-hosted agents. There we have a variety of options. The most common one probably is to use Azure VMs. The downside with this approach is you have to install the VM, update it, make sure it's secure, and you pay whenever the VM is running, which can be quite expensive. In the last two previous videos, I showed you how to use an agent inside a Docker container, which is running inside a Kubernetes cluster. And in the last video, I showed you how to run this agent inside Azure Container Apps. This approach works great in some scenarios. For example, it works great if you just want to spin up the agent, deploy something, and then spin down the agent. So you only pay whenever you use the agent. A big downside is you can't build Docker files or container in general, because Docker and Docker is not possible due to security reasons. And so we are limited what we can do. And ManagedDevOpsPools solves all these problems. The agent is running on a VM, so you have all the features of a VM, but you only pay for the time the agent is running. So you could say it's a serverless agent. And with this, let's take a look at what we're going to do today. So first, we're going to deploy the Managed DevOps pool. Then we're going to test it in the Azure DevOps pipeline and that it works building with a Docker file. After this, I want to browse through the Azure Portal and show you all the options you have with the DevOps pools. Then I want to show you some quota limitations, because out of the box, they're quite limited, and you might have to raise server support with Microsoft, and I will show you how to do this. And lastly, there was a big problem with Managed DevOps Pools in the past, and the service was completely broken. And Microsoft acknowledged this and fixed it in the meantime. So if you have had a problem in the past, I want to show you what my problem was, and maybe you had the same problem and it's fixed now, so you can use the tool. Before we can get started, we have to prepare our subscription to use the Managed DevOps Pools, and to do so, we have to register to service provider. So the first one is the Microsoft DevOps Infrastructure, and the second one is the Microsoft Dev Center. If you haven't registered the service provider in your subscription, it might take a couple minutes, and you only have to do it once. After you registered the service provider, you can check with the AC provider show command what the status of the service provider is. So in this case, we can see here the registration state is registered, because I already did it in the past, so I didn't have to re-register it. And if you check the Dev Center, it also says registered. Then the next thing we have to do is install two extensions to our Azure CLI. So the first extension is the Dev Center extension. In this case, it should only take a couple seconds, because I already have the newest version installed. And then we also install the MDP extension. That's for Managed DevOps Pool. And here I also have the newest version installed, so we're good to go. So the first thing we're going to do is define a couple variables. So we define a resource group, a location. In this case, I use Canada Central because it's the closest to me. So I would suggest you use the closest to you, although Managed DevOps Pools are not available in all regions yet. Then you have to provide a pool name. That's the name of the agent pool in Azure DevOps. Then you have to provide the name for a Dev Center and for a Dev Center project. And next up, we're going to create a resource group. And then we're going to deploy all our resources inside this resource group. So let's clean this window up. The first thing we deploy is a dev center. So let's just start this, then we take a look at what we're doing here. So we provide a name, a resource group, and a location. It's quite straightforward. And the dev center takes care of managing the infrastructure for us. If you use Azure DevBox, you might use the dev center because it also manages the infrastructure there. And if you use ManagedDevOpsPools, you don't really have to interact with it. You just have to have it so it can create all the resources you need in the background. The deployment of the dev center takes around 1 to 2 minutes. And once this is deployed, we can clean up the window again. And then we get the ID of the dev center. We are going to use the ID later when we deploy the ManagedDevOps pool. In this case, I just use the AC devcenter admin devcenter show command. Then I provide the name and I query for the ID. Next up, we're going to create a project inside this dev center. So again, we provide a name, resource group, location. Then we provide the ID of the dev center we just created and an optional description, so you know what the project is doing. Creating the dev center project should only take 1 minute, and this project will be used to host our agents. Let's clean up the window again. And now we query the ID of the dev center project we just created. And that's almost it. So the last step is to create our managed DevOps pool. I'm just gonna run this command and then we're gonna take a look what this command does. So we use AC MDP for managed DevOps pool, then pool again, create. We provide a name, resource group, location as always, then the dev center project ID, that's the project we just created. Then I use maximum concurrency 1. This means I always only have one agent running. And then I provide 3 files. And now let's take a look at these 3 files and what they configure. So the first one is the agent profile. In this file, we configure how our agent looks like or what the agent does. There I can configure if it's a stateless or stateful agent. In this case, it's stateless, and most of the time it's stateless. Then the next file is the fabric profile, and there we configure the capabilities of our agent. So first we set the VM. In this case, it's a 2-core machine. It's quite cheap. It's the default machine, and it's great to just test it. Then we define the image. So we're using Ubuntu 22.04. There are a couple images available. I think Ubuntu 20.4, 04, and also 24.04 is available, as well as Windows. Then down here, we can configure an integration with an Azure Key Vault. So if you need any certificates, we could store them in the Azure Key Vault and then the agent can access them. Then the logon type is how our agent is supposed to run. So service is the default one, but if you have tests that need interactive access, then you could also configure this here. And lastly, we don't provide any data disks, and we just use the standard operating disk. We're going to take a look in the Azure Portal what options we have, because I think there it's way easy to see, especially when you get started. And the last file we have is to configure our organization. So here we have the URL to my Azure DevOps server. Then here you can configure for what project you want to use it. In this case, the empty array means I want to use it for every project. I only allow one agent running at a time. And with the permission I set to creator only, this means I, as the creator, am the only one who can configure this agent pool. And in the meantime, if we go back, the deployment was successful. And if we switch now to our Azure DevOps server and zoom in a bit, There we see we have 3 agent pools right now, and if I refresh this page, then we see the 4th pool. That's the one we just created. So this worked fine. And to test it, I have already prepared a pipeline. And if you take a look at this pipeline, it's as simple as it can be. It just selects a Docker file and then executes a Docker build. And this is to show that you can use the agent to build Docker images. So we're going to let this run. And then we hope that our agent can build this image. And since it's the first time that we are running this agent, we have to give it the permissions. So just permit it. This usually takes around 3 minutes, but it can also take up to 15 minutes. So that's something you have to consider when you want to use ManagedDevOps Pools. But I will also show you how you can configure your agent that there's always one running, and then you can immediately pick up the pipeline and execute it, so you don't have to wait until the agent is created. As you can see, the pipeline was executed successfully, and this shows that we just deployed an agent on a VM that's capable of building Docker images, and then we use this agent. And everything together took us 5, maybe 10 minutes, and we were good to go. And since we just deployed the very basic configurations and we don't really know what else we can configure, I want to take a look at the Azure Portal. So if we switch to the portal, we can see the 3 resources we created before: the Dev Center, the project, and the Managed DevOps Pool. And as I said, the Dev Center and the project take care of the infrastructure and the hardware, so we don't really have to interact with them. And the only interesting thing for us is the Managed DevOps Pool. And if we open this, we can see that our pool was used here a couple of minutes. We used one agent. And now let's say we just go through the options. So the first thing is the pool. And here you can see exactly what we configured before. So we have the Dev Center and the project. Then here we have the domain to the Azure DevOps organization. We have a maximum of 1 agent, the agent size, the disk, and the image. And if you say this agent with 2 vCores and I think 8 GB of RAM is not enough, then you can just click on change size. And then you have a whole list of agents you can select. And as you can see, there's some available and also some not available. Let's first take a look at the available ones. And if we scroll down a bit, we can see we have 4 cores and up to 28 gigabytes of RAM, some data disk storage. And if you look at the not available one, we have even more. And one of the VMs I used in the past was the L series, and the one with 64 cores and 512 gigabytes of RAM, because it's a really fast VM and you only pay for the time you use it. So our pipeline used to take around 1 hour because it's building a big image, and with this VM we got it down to 12 minutes. So every time we built the image, we only paid for this 12 minutes. And as you can see, I don't have Quota for it yet, but if you click on the request Quota button, you can fill out a ticket and then Microsoft should approve it. And the second thing we can configure is, as I said, we have here Ubuntu 22.04, but if we don't like this, we can just delete it and add a different image. So we have here the Windows Server 22 and 2019, and then Ubuntu 22 and 20.04. Before I said there's also 24.04, so that's something in preview, but it should come very soon. And if you want to switch it, let's say we want to switch to Windows, we just select it and click on Add. And now we have a Windows agent. Then the next thing that's great to configure is, do you want to use a fresh agent or the same agent all the time? I have configured to use a fresh agent. In this case, the agent is newly generated and I have a complete clean slate. But if you want to use the same agent, you can just configure it, and then you can configure how long this agent should live. The downside is that you pay for the time the agent is alive. The upside is you don't have to wait until the agent is ready. So it depends on your requirements what the best approach is. And another great feature is you can configure standby agents. In this case, I don't have any because I don't want to pay for it. But if you don't want to wait the 3 to 15 minutes for the agent to be created, you can have standby agents and then they are running and just waiting to be used. Again, the advantage is you don't have to wait, they're immediately available. The downside is you pay for all the time they're running, not just when you use them. And there you can configure it manually. So for example, you can say, I want them to start on Monday, 9 a.m. because that's when my teams start to work. And I want to stop them at 5 p.m. because then everyone is going home. Or I can also let Microsoft decide it and let them automatically create standby agents. This is based on a machine learning model, so it might take a couple days or maybe even weeks until Microsoft figures out what your pattern is. But for example, if you use them from 9 to 5, then the machine learning will figure it out and automatically configure it that only from 9 to 5 your agents are running. And there you can also say, do you want it more on the cost side or more on the performance side? So more on the cost saving side means you have to wait longer. More on the performance side means you have your agents fast available, but it costs you more. Then the next option is the networking. And that's one of the downsides I mentioned with the Microsoft hosted agents. So we're using the same software, but with ManagedDevOpsPools, we can integrate our agent inside a VNet. And the big advantage is if you have private resources, for example, a data bank or a key vault, which you don't want to have on the internet or available on the internet, you can inject the agent inside the VNet and then only need the database, key vault, whatever resource you have, be available via the VNet. So the pipeline can access it, but it's still a secure access. Then maybe you've seen it, but the VM I selected has a very limited disk size. So if you need more storage, you can just configure it here. So you can say I want to have 100 gigabyte. I don't want any caching and what disk you want. For example, a premium disk, which is really fast, and then it gets attached to the agent automatically. Then here under security, we can configure for what organizations we want to use our agents. By default, it's only for one organization, but you can also attach it to multiple Azure DevOps organizations. And there you can also configure if you want to do it only in one project or in all projects. Like here we said, I want it in all projects, but if you say no, then you can provide here the name of the project or even multiple projects. Then down here we have the interactive mode. That's what I said before. Right now our agent is just running as a service, but some tests need the interactive mode activated and they can just activate it. And lastly, we have the integration to a key vault. This is useful if your agent needs certificates. So you can configure the key vault and then the agent goes and picks the certificate automatically. The identity is just a user-assigned identity, so that's just a standard Azure feature. Then in the agents, we have an overview of the agents we are using or used. So we can see here with Ubuntu 22.04 and it's back and the status is returned. This means it ran and then it stopped. And that's everything in the Azure portal. So if you want to get started with ManagedDevOpsPools, I would recommend to deploy it first in the Azure portal because it's quite easy to see what you can configure. You can take a look at the options you have. And once you know what you want to do, you can use the script I used. As always, I will provide a link to my GitHub repository and there you can find all the instructions I used before. So next up, I want to take a look at the quotas. As I said, the quotas are very limited by default, but you can get them increased very easily. So if you go to the search bar and you search for quotas, you will find this page and there you have Managed DevOps Pools. This overview is, to be honest, quite horrible because it shows you every VM of every region. And as you can see, there are almost 6,000 available. So they're all listed here. And it also shows you per subscription. So I have to select the subscription I've been using. And there I can see I use 2 of the 5 cores available with just my one agent. So if you want to have multiple agents or scale this agent to 3, then you would already get an error message that you ran out of quota. But what you can do is you have the icon here on the right. And if you click it, then you can set a new limit. Sometimes it's automated. Sometimes a Microsoft employee has to do something. So I would suggest just try it and then you will see what happens. In best case, it's automated and within a couple seconds, you have the new quota available. This concludes everything I wanted to show you about the Managed DevOps Pools today, but there's one more topic I want to talk about. And this is a breaking bug that has been around in January 2025. And I reported the bug in the developer community and it has been resolved. But I want to show this to you just in case you tried it yourself, you had some obscure error messages and just gave up. And the problem I had was that when you tried to deploy a Managed DevOps pool, that the request just timed out after 1 hour. So here, I hope it's readable. You can see the error message. It said, the request has been completed with result cancelled. Please check details with more information. And the details were empty, so they didn't give any error or any hint what it could do. And as you can see, I tried several regions, different VMs, everything, and nothing worked. And if you had this problem, it was in the whole tenant. So no subscription could use Managed DevOps Pools. And I used it before, I think it was in December 2024, and everything worked, and suddenly it didn't work. And if we scroll down a bit, we can see here the error in the Azure portal during the deployment. Then I did more testing, and then suddenly the Azure portal wasn't working anymore, so I couldn't even open the page to create new Managed DevOps Pools. I couldn't fetch the VMs, so nothing was working. And then more and more people pitched in with the same error message, and this was great because this helped Microsoft to see that there was something going on, and so they took a look at it. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, they said they fixed it, but then I still had some errors with the quota. So it said I exceeded the quota, although I wasn't using anything, but they also fixed this problem. So if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see it has been fixed. And since then, we can use the Managed DevOps Pools again. So just in case, if you tried it in the past, it didn't work. Now, I would recommend that you try it again because it has been fixed. And it's a great tool. So it's definitely worth giving it another try. The last topic I want to talk about are some considerations about Managed DevOps Pools. As I said, I think it's a game changer for self-hosted agents because it gives you the flexibility of running serverless agents, for example, in a container, combined with the power of using virtual machines. So you have all the power of the VM, you can build Docker images, but you only pay for the time you're using the agent if you don't have any standby agents. As I just said, it's running on a VM and you only pay for what you use. Then what's really awesome is the VNet integration. So you just select the VNet you want to use, and Azure takes care that the agent will be placed inside this VNet. And this allows you to do secure deployments to private resources. Then, as we have seen, we can build container images, which was not possible using Azure Container Apps and was only possible running in privileged mode in Kubernetes, which brings some security problems. So in this case, we are able to do whatever we want to do and we are still secure. And as I've showed, there are various scaling options. So we can have standby agents, so we don't have to wait for a new agent to be created. We can create more agents if we need them. So for example, if our pipeline needs 5 agents, Azure will take care that we have 5 agents running. We can use powerful VMs if we need them, and everything can be configured with a click in the Azure Portal or just with a single command line command. And since it's a brand new feature or service, there are more features coming in the near future. One of the great features are spot VMs or spot instances, and they're coming in March 2025. Spot instances are virtual machines that are discounted to up to 80%. So in case Microsoft has some resources over in some data centers, they give you a steep discount, but the downside is that you might get evicted if they need the resources. But if you have pipelines where you don't care if the pipeline restarts, then this is a great option to save even more money. And another feature that's coming this year is to run container agents. This means you could provide your own container image, and then Azure will take care that the image will be run. So far, there's no timeline, but it will be coming in 2025. And that's everything I wanted to show you today. ManagedDevOps Pools is an amazing service, and I highly encourage you to use it for your Azure DevOps pipelines, or at least try it out and see if that's something useful to you. As always, all the code and the presentation will be on my GitHub repository. And if you have any suggestions for future topics, any comments, criticism, feedback, everything is welcome. Just leave a comment and I see you next week.